Hi guys, so in today's video I want to talk about the most common mistakes that young filmmakers out there make. And to help me out, I got Rafi.
Hey guys, I'm Rafi. I'm a director. I've been doing short films, music videos, finished a feature, but you should pay attention to me because I've been yelled at by Spike Lee. And I've done everything. I've held a boom, I've been a PA, intern, all the way up to director now, so I have a lot of stuff to say.
Gear geeks. This is for all of you guys out there that are spending way too much money on gear that you really shouldn't probably be spending on, that maybe you should be putting into actual production of the film. And I know a lot of you guys out there, you're letting that sort of stop you from actually making the film itself.
Yeah, first of all, I'm a gear geek myself. I read the blogs every day, but you can't go too far with it. Filmmaking is about ideas and it's about action. It's about going out there and doing things. And the gear won't make you an artist, right? They're tools to help you get better at your craft.
I think a lot of times too, people just, I think they're kind of almost waiting maybe for the equipment to validate them or make them look more like actual professionals. And they're almost afraid to, go out there with just a simple DSLR, hand-holding the camera, and just start filming something. They think that basically, unless they have those big cameras, big setups, dollies, cranes, all that stuff, and a big team behind them, that it's not an actual film. Which I know I sometimes kind of I catch myself, especially since I had experience working. Yeah, it's fun. And then, like I said, sometimes you kind of get lazy or you get sort of spoiled by working on these bigger productions. But at the same time, when I know for myself at least, when like the last film I did, The Big Wild North, I shot at Canon 7D, me pretty much, my brother, and that was it. And then my cast was also my brother, who was the producer and sound guy, and then my other younger brother. It was so low budget. It was like seriously the simplest shoot and probably the most fun that I've had in a while. So
yeah, I've done a shoot where I was like literally in the water with a mic like taped to the back of my ear and just like, it was like the actor was right there and my boom guy didn't want to get in the water, whatever it was, and it was just me and the actor, and we were making the scene happen. He didn't know his lines. I'm throwing him new lines, and it was very creative. And sometimes you can be super creative when you don't have all that stuff.
I think you can be even more creative. I think when you're, because I know that like when I first started working on some of these bigger productions, it can be also intimidating. You get on there's a lot of people waiting for you, to kind of say what to do. And also there's so much equipment that you're almost like, you're not sure, where should I put this light or that crane or something like that. And I think, like you said, when it's just you and the camera and the actor, it's, I don't know, at least for me, it's very freeing.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic that happens that way. Yeah.
So definitely, if you guys are, if you're one of those guilty of, of being obsessing about the gear out there, stop it. Pretty much like I said, just go out there and whatever it is that you can get your hands on, just go out there and actually make a film.
Mental barriers. This is something that we all as artists and creative people have, is you don't think that you're good enough, or that someone is, I don't have the talent, or I don't have the whatever it is to like go out and do what it is that you want to do. And I think a lot of that is just like nobody was born with the talent or the ability or the writing or the equipment. Everyone acquires that over time. And to me, this is meaningful. There's a book I think you should read. It's called Art and Fear. And the intro to the book, I'm not giving away the whole book, but the intro is this thing in an art school, and this sculpture teacher has like, people with the clay wheel, and he says half of the class, he does an experiment, half of the class will be judged only by making the perfect vase. You spend all semester, you only have to turn in one piece of pottery that's the very best. And part B of the class, you'll be judged solely by how many pieces you create. So at the end of the semester, I'm going to bring out a big scale. If you've made 50 pounds of work,
so like quantity versus quality?
Yeah, yeah. And so he goes through the semester, everyone makes pottery, and the group A is tinkering and studying the best pottery ever, and group B is just working. And at the end of the semester, the best pieces all came out of group B, because not only were they studying like how to actually, we're just cranking out pieces, so they get better as
experience. I guess, yeah. No, that's definitely a thing that I've known from like my own experience, because I kind of started filmmaking. I started as an animator, so I was doing animated films. But before I got into live action, I was interested in photography, you know, and didn't know that I was going to end up working as a cinematographer in a lot of films. But I think the photography kind of led me to that step, even though my first photographs, if you know, if you guys have seen them, they were pretty bad, pretty horrible. And it's like I said, like if I just looked at that and I kind of said, okay, there's no way, you know, I can ever compete with what's out there, you know, those kind of mainstream films, or you know, big time photographers, then I would have given up. And it definitely took a little bit of that, like I said, that me passing through those little mental barriers, to kind of just say, okay, I know I can get there. I just have to actually, you know, learn how to do it. And that's what I did. So I remember before I ever even touched a video camera or film camera, I started shooting actually, you know, it was a film camera, but it was a still 35mm film camera. And I would just shoot photos and photos, and I would sort of dissect them and just sort of, you know, try to get better with each photo.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like you said. And so it's sort of like I said, you know, doing those patterning things.
Yeah, it's an iterative process. It's like each time you look at something, and you'll just like let's say you take the best director in the world, you know, and you say whether for you that's Steven Spielberg or Quentin Tarantino, whoever your favorite director is. And just watch your stuff and then watch their stuff and then see what's, you know, they had better actors, they had better locations, better clothes, better lighting, and then sooner or later you'll start knocking off those things. You get your lighting better, you get your technique better, your writing better, and you'll see, like, when you look at your first pieces and work that you did, like, oh wow, that, you know, I'm so much better than where I was, and that's just the iteration of continuing to work. And so to me, the mental barrier is the thing that holds you back, that says, oh, I can't do that because I'm not Quentin Tarantino yet. Well, it's like, nobody
you have to get to that place.
Yeah.
And the same thing I think goes with when it comes to money. Like, I think that's just more of like an excuse, you know, people have, is like, oh, I don't have the money, or many people contact me, for example, and they're like, you know, saying, Tom, you know, how can I become a filmmaker when I live, you know, in the middle of nowhere? There's a little town, you know, I don't know, a few hundred people live there. Nobody's interested in filmmaking. And yes, there's bad things about that, but I think there's also great things about that. Because, for example, try shooting something in New York City. It's very difficult if you have no money. Versus actually being out there in the middle of nowhere, that allows you to shoot, you know, pretty much anywhere, and people are, I think, a lot more cooperative. Like, that's why I go back, you know, to where my family is in Canada, and I go back there a lot to shoot a lot of projects of my own, because I know that over there I won't have any problems. Versus here, or for example in Los Angeles, very difficult for you know, beginner filmmakers, right?
Yeah, I think like when you're out in a small place, you just have the locations that you have, like as filmmakers in New York, we'll rent cars, drive way out, like try and find these places. You're already there. And so use what's around you. I think any artist starting out, you use what you have access to, and that's, you know, you add from there. So like, to me, that's one of the barriers that's actually kind of a blessing in disguise, or can be.
Untrusting. So this definitely applies to all of you guys out there who are overly, you know, being overly competitive and just, you know, untrusting of other filmmakers, versus actually sort of embracing, I think, the whole filmmaking community and actually helping each other out, you know, like sharing trade secrets. Because I've spoken to a lot of filmmakers out there who believe they have these, like I said, secrets. But you know what? At the end of the day, guys, you're better off, you know, sharing the knowledge, helping other filmmakers who are coming up. You know, that's what part of the reason why I do, you know, YouTube, and I share what I share up here on my YouTube channel. It's because I think at the end of the day, making those connections, helping other filmmakers can only help you, because you never know who's the next Spielberg that might give you a call and actually work with you. But aside from that, it's like I said, it's those secrets that you think, you know, are like, oh my God, only you're the one that came out with them, are really not secrets. That, you know, at the end of the day, it's just filmmaking, and if you came up with it, somebody else out there is also bound to come up with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been at like a film festival or a talk, or, you know, and there'll be someone like, oh, I can't tell you my idea because my shit is so dope that like if I even tell it to you, then you might steal it. And it's like, well, if you don't tell me the idea, then I don't have a way of knowing if it's any good or not. You know what I mean? It's like ridiculous. Like, I think we're in a business of like you pitch people your ideas all the time, and like ideas are free. Like they come to you, you write them down, and then they go away. And like there's so many times I think many people have had this experience of having an idea for a song or for a video or for whatever, and then you just see it. You know, it's in the culture, it's in the air, and you have to just, you know, as much as possible, you want to get through that idea and get to the next idea, and that's how you're gonna be productive. Is you know, putting out a lot of stuff and working through a lot of ideas, but this whole thing of like,
like holding on to something, like, I also think that first of all, it doesn't help the filmmakers as a community, but aside from that, I don't think it helps the individual, right? Because if you're not going to share, then trust me, you're not going to get help when you actually need it from other filmmakers. And I think this applies whether it's, for example, stories like you're talking about, but even like, you know, I've worked with a lot of other DPs that have these sort of little secrets, you know, of like, oh, I use this special lens, you know, and it's like, well, how special can that lens be? Somebody else, you know, I'm guessing there's more than one lens out there like that, and somebody out there is using it, or you know, like I said, they'll put a special filter, you know, and they don't want to say what it is, and it's, like I said, at the end of the day, whatever you discovered, trust me, somebody else is going to discover it too, and if you're not going to share it, the other person will. And at the end of the day, you're just going to look like the asshole who basically didn't want to share the information. So I think you're better off sharing and also learning from other filmmakers, being open to ideas. And the same thing I think with stories. Like, I know there's been a lot of you know, like films out there that you kind of hear maybe the synopsis for it, and you kind of think it almost sounds like it's identical like some other film out there that you've already seen. But then again, like I said, the central idea might be the same, but when you have two different filmmakers actually make that film, they can end up drastically different. There's a big difference between just straight out copying somebody's film, like word for word or scene for scene, versus somebody just being maybe inspired, I would say, by another artist's work.
Yeah, and don't steal other people's ideas. It's that simple. Like,
exactly.
Like, creativity is about building on what came before you, but you know, you have to be open and share in order for that to happen, and you also have to respect that process that other people have.
There's like a fine line between stealing and just being inspired by other filmmakers, I think, and also sharing. So definitely stop, you know, hoarding those trade secrets, share, and just, you know, don't be so jealous, basically, of other filmmakers.
Passiveness. This is deadly as an artist, as a creator. It's called a creator for a reason. You make things, and you can't sit there with your hands in your pockets. One of the best pieces of advice I ever had was, I was interning. It was my first shoot, first or second shoot out of college, and I was standing there, and the producer of the shoot is like, "What are you doing? Like, get in there and shoot." And I was like, "What do you mean? I have the camera. I'm here." He's like, "No, you're being passive. You're letting it happen. You got to get in there and shoot." And that's the attitude we have to have. You have to go out and get the material that you want. You have to go out and put it into the camera. Otherwise, no one else is going to put it there for you.
Yeah, and also I think a lot of times also I think people maybe are waiting to be really inspired by something out there, which is, you know, it can be a good thing, but it can only be a good thing if you actually afterwards follow through. And all too many times I think a lot of people just, you know, they read inspirational, you know, filmmaking books or you know, watch a film out there that they really love, and then they kind of come back home and they're like, you know, I'm going to make a film just like this kind of thing. And it's good to get inspired, like I said, by other people's work, but you have to actually follow through with it. If that's all you're ever doing is just watching other people's work or reading, you know, or just playing with your camera gear, and, you know, you're just kind of thinking of all the cool things that you could do, but you never actually do it, then that's, you know, like I said, then you're going to end up not doing anything. You know? And very easily, I know, time can pass by. Just it starts with, you know, 2 or 3 days there, and then, you know, a week or month goes by, and then you realize a whole year passed by and you haven't shot a film. So.
There's a concept I have called a turtleneck filmmaker, and that's a person who wants to sit in their turtleneck and smoke their little cigarettes and say everything about film, but never make a film.
Oh yeah, that's
don't
like most
be
critics.
A turtleneck filmmaker. Get out there and make your movie.
Yeah, don't be so much of a critic. Fears. So this kind of applies to you know, to everybody who I guess is kind of contemplating on becoming an actual filmmaker as a career. I guess there's a big difference if you're, you know, just kind of experimenting as a filmmaker, and then versus actually stepping into it and kind of, like I said, you know, letting that become your livelihood, because, you know, becoming a filmmaker can be very challenging, I think, from a financial point of view. Right?
Sure, yeah.
You're an indie filmmaker?
No, I think that is like the biggest fear a lot of people have is, well, I can get a job that I know is tried and true, or I can do this thing that's artistic or whatever. I think luckily we're in a time right now where it's very easy to be creative. You can go out, you can get a camera for not a lot of money, you can experiment on the weekends, but then there comes that point where you have to jump in. You have to say, this is what I want to do, and I think that fear of not doing that is what holds a lot of people back, because once you're willing to say, like, I'm trying to make videos, I want to do this, people know that about you, and they're like, oh, well, you know, here's the guy who makes videos, like, you know, can you help this person? And I think a lot of doors open when you kind of get over the fear of even admitting to yourself and to others that this is what you want to do, that I want to make films, and this is what I am doing. When that comes out, then it changes your relationship, and all of a sudden you've claimed it. You've staked out some territory.
Yeah, I know that one of the best pieces of advice that I got out of many at the beginning when I was starting out was from another established filmmaker who told me, you know, because I was kind of already making little short films, submitting them to film festivals, but somebody asked me, what do you do? I was like, oh, I kind of work in the film industry, I do some effects. Like, I was afraid to say I'm a director.
Right.
And then he told me, he says, Tom, just print out a little business card, it says Tom Antos, and then just says director, and that's it. Like, just give that out to people. And so once you start doing that and actually admitting to yourself that you're a film director, it's going to be, obviously, you know, like the money and all that other stuff, the contacts and just, you know, actually getting into industry is going to slowly follow. But like I said, I think the biggest barrier is you got to have to sort of admit to it yourself. And
you got to claim it.
Yeah, you got to step over that fear. And then I think other fears are also, you know, fears that have to do maybe not so much financially, but maybe just being, like, actually putting yourself out there when it comes to your work, because especially when you're working on films that you've written, you've directed, they can become very, you know, very personal. And when you're putting that work out there, or you just, you know, just when you're putting a lot of, you know, sweat and tears into your project, a lot of, you know, sleepless nights, and then you put it out there, and then people just critique it, especially up here on YouTube, you know, which I think YouTube can be a great platform for that, but also bad, because people hide behind the keyboard, and then, you know, you have those haters who just, like, I know myself, there's some people out there who I think they're just waiting for me to release a new video, and then, you know, and then the second I do, all you know, the first thing they do is they just kind of jump online and they're like, oh, Tom, I hate you, you know, you suck, that kind of thing. And you kind of just have to get over it, and also I think learn to accept criticism and learn from it. Yeah,
I mean, I think there's a lot of, in the mentality of an artist, of like, oh, what right do I have to be doing this? You know, Truman Capote is a genius. He can write. Why Woody Allen is a genius. Who am I? Like, what right do I have to be doing this work? And so I think at some point you just have to say, well, there's a story I have to tell, and if I don't tell it, then no one else will. And once you kind of orient yourself around that, as opposed to in the negative, like, what right do I have? I'm not a genius. Then it's like, it's a lot easier. It's like, nobody can tell the story of a kid who grew up in DC and moved to Boston and loves hip hop and makes videos. You know, I can tell that story. And so that's, it's a lot easier. You got to find these ways to trick yourself into believing, hey, I'm the perfect person to do this, but the reality is that no one else is, and that's how you do it. You have to conquer those fears.
Yeah.
Mishandling criticism. This is really key in the YouTube era and the Twitter. You know, there's a lot of haters lurking in the bushes, and what you have to do is separate the critique from what the message is, the note versus what someone is saying. So if someone's saying, like, you're like, oh, all your shots suck, they're too dark, it's like, oh, maybe my lighting's not good. You know, there's like, you have to find, if there's a message, quickly find out, is there a message I can actually take away from this? And if not, if this person is just BS, then just ignoring it. And so not getting emotionally tied up to it, but look for the actual note that can help you. If there isn't one, on to the next. Yeah,
I think I think the hard thing with criticism is that at the end of the day, it's going to be a negative comment or something negative that somebody says. So that you have to kind of look past that negative aspect of it, and like you said, pull some kind of a lesson out of there. Because like you said, maybe there is actually something that you can improve on. And then, you know, sometimes some people are just being negative. So if you look past it, I think, then you can actually...
Don't be a troll. And if you know somebody who is a troll, crush them, block them, ban them, or try and educate them.
Or just ignore them. That's what I do. Cinematography in post-production. Trying to do or make your shots look really good in post-production when you're doing color correction or reframing or special effects. I think it's a very common mistake that I know a lot of filmmakers out there make. Like I said, they'll shoot whatever it is that they can capture on the day, and I think a lot of it comes down to out of the fact that when you're actually starting out as a filmmaker and you're getting, you show up on the day of the shoot, it can be very intimidating, and things move very fast, or it seems like the day goes by really fast. And so a lot of times people, instead of sort of slowing down and kind of concentrating on getting a nice shots, they kind of just rush through it, get whatever it is that they can get, and then later on they're kind of editing the film and they realize that the shots don't look that good, but they kind of keep on telling themselves or the other people on their team, that, oh, don't worry, well, it's gonna look good once we do the colors and all that stuff. And I mean, the truth is, if you don't light your shot properly, if you don't, compose it properly, you don't pick the right angles, all those things, there's only so much that you can do with color correction. I think color correction, yes, can help, right? Mm-hmm. I think, especially nowadays when you're shooting with these new cameras that have flat profiles and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, that I will bring the life back to the shot, but you can only do so much. If you have a bad shot that's just badly framed, badly exposed, or whatever, it's just not an interesting shot, and the color correction is not gonna fix that.
Tom said everything. The only thing I'm gonna add to it is cinematography in post, you can't do it. Tom has a great video, actually, one of his early videos on his channel about composing good shots and using locations well. Just watch that video. He tells you, he already taught you how to do it.
Good tip. Achieving the final look in camera.
You're trying to train your eye, so that when you're on set, you see it, you can imagine how it's going to look in the end. And
yeah, because I think one mistake that many filmmakers at the beginning make is that they kind of, like I said, you can't expect to do your shot in post-production. At the same time, there's, you can't expect that your shot is going to look beautiful right in camera when you're looking, especially when you're looking at those little, whether it's EVFs or little field monitors. They're not going to show you the colors properly, but the big thing is also, you got to imagine that shot being that much bigger, especially if it's on a big screen or even a big screen TV. And especially these days, a lot of advanced color correction where you might change the tint of the sky or things like that. You got to sort of imagine those things. So you have to have that photographic eye. And I think one great skill that cinematographers had back in the day is when I started, we were still shooting with film cameras, is that back in the day, you really couldn't judge. You kind of had to kind of trust your experience, because the field monitor was there purely just to kind of look at the performances and the overall composition of the shot. But there was no color. Most of the field
it was black and white.
Yeah. So you could definitely you can judge color, but also even just the quality was pretty horrible. I mean, some of the field monitors, you could even see the blades of the film camera moving and stuff. So I know when I was starting out, it was kind of overwhelming, but you kind of have to, like I said, you kind of have to trust yourself and experience, and it kind of comes back to one of the earlier points about just gaining enough experience. And I think that's the only way that you're going to kind of learn to know when you have the enough, there on location.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, like, the best camera is right here. This is how you see the shot. The camera body itself is just a tool for capturing what your eye already sees. So you can't rely on this lens and that's gonna make the shot hot. It's like, no, like, you have to see a beautiful thing and then you film it. Yeah. And so the key is to just choose great locations, choose good backgrounds, choose the relative size of your subjects in your background, or whatever, how you move them in the frame you're blocking. All those things are going to make your shot look good. Not just like, oh, I'm adding this tent in post, I'm doing this. That is kind of the icing on the cake. That's how to take stuff that's already good and make it better. But the quality that you get in camera in the very beginning is all about your eye and your vision as a creative person. I think
that's a great way to you summed it up, because I know a lot of times people ask me, like, where how do you get ideas for a certain shot, and or they ask me how I should do this shot or that shot, and I think it really, I mean, you have to know it, right? Yeah. You kind of have to imagine in your head first. Only then, once you have it in your head, then what you're really just doing with your camera is kind of, you're just trying to replicate what you already have in your head with the camera. But if what you have with your head is not a good idea or not a good looking shot, the final thing is not going to look good.
Yeah, like half of your look comes from your location, comes from the clothes that the actors are wearing, comes from like everything like external to how you light it or the camera or lens you choose. So when you think about look, you know, it's like if you have a huge room with lots of depth, then you can get that soft fallout and you can have bokeh in the background. You can make these kind of very cinematic shots. If you have a room that's 4 feet deep and with white walls and the actor's wearing a white t-shirt, then you don't have a good shot, you know. And so when you think of your look, you know, invest in spending the time to find good locations and think about what your characters are wearing. Think about all these things that are going to affect the actual colors of what end up being on the screen, in addition to the traditional cinematography aspects like the lighting and the camera and lens choice.
Yeah, because I think cinematography is not just about the camera, which I think a lot of filmmakers, you know, make that mistake. It's about, you know, everything that makes up the shot. So obviously your camera settings are important, but what you're actually capturing with the camera, right?
Yeah.
So your set, costumes, all that stuff.
Slow editing.
Like this right now. Let's take a pause and let's just. That's what we're talking about. Slow editing.
Slow editing. A lot of filmmakers, especially beginning filmmakers, are overly impressed with what they do. Whether it's, oh, I got this great shot, and just the way he sets that glass down at the end of the shot, I'm going to hold the whole shot. And it's like, bro, I don't need to see the end. I don't need to even see the beginning half the time of the shot. So what you have to do is put yourself in the editing process in the position of the audience, and once you give them the essential information, we don't care if your dolly ends up going through a bridge after that. Nobody, you know, like a lot of times we get impressed with our shots and, oh, I know that at the end this light just flicks off his glasses beautifully. And it's like the audience could care less about that. They want story, and they want story on top of story, and you have to deliver story at all times. Film is about bringing people through a moment and delivering those moments, and editing is a process of taking things out that don't deliver that moment.
Yeah, that's true.
So you have to get that skill.
And I think also another reason I think why sometimes filmmakers do these long, slow, you know, like I said, moving kind of stories or just slow editing, is because they're trying to also match their final film or video to a certain length. A lot of it, I know, I've talked to some filmmakers who, when they submit their films to festivals, they're trying to match that length to be qualified as a feature film or as this, you know, short film or whatever it is that the requirement is. And I'll tell you that's the biggest mistake. Because so what if you qualify for that certain category if at the end of the day your film suffers? Because, you know, there's a lot of films out there that I've watched where they have a great story for a 2 or 3 minute film, not for a 20-minute film.
Yeah.
No. But then you watch that film, that story that you could get in 2 or 3 minutes, but when you're watching it over 20 minutes, that same story that could be maybe great in 2 minutes, in 20 minutes becomes very boring, right?
Yeah, I have a note that I can't tell you how many times I've given, which is, you know, you tell a friend, it's like, well, you know, you have a 7-minute film hiding in the body of a 12-minute film. And, you know, they keep giving you recut. Do you see the new end, the new beginning? It's like, yeah, but did you cut those extra 5 minutes out of it?
Yeah.
You know, cut down concision will help you more than any other thing in editing.
And it's a hard thing, I know, cutting down, especially your own work, or especially when you're. That's why I think sometimes it is good maybe to have another person do like a pre-cut or, you know, rough edit of your film that hasn't been there on the set, because I know a lot of times, even for myself, when you spend, you know, and especially when you're like, it's those grueling days, you know, like there was one film I shot, as action film, you know, out in the winter. It was one of the most brutal winters I, you know, ever experienced when filming outside. And, you know, it was just really hard getting those really cool looking shots, like you said.
Yeah.
So you kind of feel like, okay, I need this shot. Or sometimes, you know, you feel like I need this whole sequence in there. When in, you know, a good editor, somebody who doesn't care about how much time it took you to get that good shot or that sequence, they're just going to cut it out if they don't think it serves the story at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best shots I ever did, it was this Steadicam shot. The party scene, we had 20 extras. We're going outside to inside. There's a joke. Then the guy stands up, and I'm sitting there watching on the monitor. I'm like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. Like, I can't believe.
It was like really elaborate setup.
It was beautiful, you know. But like, you know, and even in the editing room, I didn't want to cut the shot. I was like, no, but this part, and it was just like, when we finally started cutting into the shot and using the reverse shots, it was a third the length of the initial shot. But the story moved beautifully through that moment, and it was like all the good parts that were in the shot are still going to end up in the movie, but none of that fluff that we're waiting for to turn this corner. No, you know, you have to get a good editor, and not editing yourself, I think, is a huge way to lift the burden of that memory of you remembering what it was like on set. And this editor doesn't. They just say, oh, well, just slow down here, I cut it and move to this.
Yeah. Or, you know, I edit a lot of stuff myself, but you know what? I think if you decide that you're going to edit on your own, you have to be very open to other people's criticism, basically. Kind of goes back to the other point where, you know, and you have to actually look for criticism, because I know that for me, the way I kind of do it now is like I said, I'll edit my own films, but once I get the rough cut, I'll show it to people who haven't been there on set, you know, whether it's filmmakers or other people who know nothing about filmmaking, just get them to watch the film and see what their opinion is, and also just watch them, like watch their reactions as they're watching the film, because you'll notice a lot of times when, you know, when the shot is too long or just a sequence is too long, that people just kind of start looking at their watch or their cell phone or whatever.
You'll hear shuffling, you'll hear paper, like, to me, those bodily signals that people send that they're bored is like, you know, when they're wrapped and you have their attention, they don't move. They're there with you. But when it's too slow or whatever, you'll start to hear all this stuff that you would never hear in a screening room. And those are the telltale signs. Oh, we need to speed this moment up. We need to take that out.
So, yeah, you got to learn to cut your film, you know, and cut out all the, there was a famous filmmaker that said once, you gotta learn to catch your baby.
Kill your babies.
Or kill your babies.
Yeah.
Who was it?
I don't know. Yeah.
Somebody out there said it, and it's true. You gotta learn to kill your babies. Only when it comes to film. Bad sound. There's nothing that gives away, I think, amateurish or just indie filmmaking as bad sound. I mean, that it's the first thing just it's a big giveaway right away that this is like a low-end production. So
it's like people might even look at bad picture or shaky picture, but if the sound is bad, they just they'll walk out. You know, it's a no-no.
And I think I know like a lot of times people might wonder, but how can you forgive, but let's say bad picture versus that sound? And I think it comes down to the fact that maybe you shoot let's say like the Blair Witch Project, right? That film was shot to make it was made to look like it was on purpose shot on home video cameras, so that's why it looked like a home video camera, and that's why the audience doesn't mind it. But the film sounded good, and I know that film had spent a lot of money in post-production doing really good sound.
Yeah.
Because sound, you never really expect sound to sound bad. And when I say bad sound, I mean like you don't take the time to find a clear, good location or filming at a good time where there's not a lot of background noise or things like that, or
the mic is rustling under someone's shirt the whole time,
exactly, like it's basically just not being careful. And so it comes down to technical things, with the audio equipment, but also just creative choices and how you capture the sound and stuff like that. And if you don't take the time to do that, and then especially afterwards in post-production, how you mix it and stuff, then if it just sounds cheap, people are going to be like, well, that's a cheap film. Versus, if the film looks cheap, but it sounds good, they're going to actually sit down to see whether it's an interesting story.
No, the director Paul Greengrass, he's done like Jason Bourne movies, and his style, the camera is going like this. Bloody Sunday, it's like he has that super verite style, and it's like, but no, you'll just go with him because it feels like you're right there. And what is the place? It's great acting and great sound, puts you right there. And his camera is designed to feel like this thing. No, but in the opposite case, if the camera sounds like wind is blowing on it, then it's like nobody's gonna watch that.
Yeah. So definitely learn those basics of good sound. Don't capture sound for your film with the onboard mic on your camera. Get a good shotgun microphone. I think is the first big thing.
Yeah.
And then after that, learn to properly mix the sound. See what's important also. And also, I think a lot of it with good sound is knowing what to keep in your final film and what to throw away. Obviously, if you have a dialogue, you want to make sure that you just get the dialogue, and that's why in big productions, really all you're really worrying about capturing on set is mainly just the dialogue. Everything else, the footsteps running, explosions, you can do all of that afterwards with special effects. With sound effects,
libraries.
Versus just capturing the performances, the actor's voice. That's the number one important thing. So if you get that clean, the rest you can put in nice sounds from sound libraries, and I think that's it, right?
Yeah. bad casting, you can't, you just, if, I once had a woman come out to an audition and she could barely read. And I was like, how do you put this person, how did she think she was going to get in a movie? And like, don't you be the person.
Maybe she thought it was a silent part.
Her headshot was her wedding photo. It was just, the whole thing was crazy. But I was like, you know, you can't win like that, right? Like I think I've cast friends and things, and I think sometimes if a friend is perfect for the role, it works.
Yeah.
But I think there are so many actors out there. There's so many people in whatever town. People love to be in things, and if you can find those people and somehow build relationships with them, they're going to be better than the people that you can just are just a text message away. They're going to invest. They're going to, you know, bring something skill to it. And when you have a great actor delivering your lines, when you have somebody who's really funny saying your jokes and everyone on set is busting up, you can't beat that. And so it's worth spending the time finding those people, and it'll make your movie better. And you also have a professional relationship. You'll be able to, you know, you'll be able to say like, oh, you know, what I want is she's mad about her dead cat, but she's really more mad that her husband took her TV away. And they'll shade that performance and really give you something that you couldn't have gotten with just your friend comes in and says the line and just is waiting for lunch.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I think there is a place though for hiring maybe non-professionals, as you would call them, for parts. I want maybe not for main parts, but for basically people who you would say don't have any acting experience, but that's only if they're basically already themselves in their part. So if you're asking them, you know, I don't know, maybe it's you need somebody in the background or some small little part, you know, 1 or 2 lines. I don't know, let's say it's, you know, a fisherman or somebody. Somebody who's like, you know, goes out there and big sailboats or whatever, you know, or a sailor or something like that, and has that experience, knows the lingo. And you tell that person to act like themselves, they'll act like themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, not always. So you do have to make sure. Some people are just the second you point the camera at them, they're horrible. But there is a lot of people that I've used who are not actual professional actors, and I've used them very well if you know where to use them. But definitely having up somebody who's an actor with experience, you know, maybe not so much having, you know, being accredited or whatever, because that also doesn't always count. I've hired actors sometimes that were from the biggest union or whatever it is, you know, and then you realize they're not as good. Just having somebody who's got a good experience, who's natural in front of a camera, it makes a big difference. And like you said, and also somebody who has lots of different skills, because they can change it up on set and they can try different things.
Yeah.
Versus you get an actor who doesn't have the experience, and you know, maybe even one that's comfortable in front of the camera, but just the experience isn't there. And then you ask them like, you know, like they did the scene very well, you know, and I know a lot of times like, you know, I'll go through a scene with an actor and I like what they do, but then afterwards I'm like, well, but maybe we can try it more like this, or maybe make the scene a little bit, you know, a little bit louder or something. And a good actor will know right away, okay, you know, this is what I can do. Whereas an actor who doesn't have experience is just pretty much going to be delivering the same performance over and over.
I think, you know, non-actors, which Tom said it perfectly, they will give you this authenticity that you can't get elsewhere. Like a fisherman will know how to bait a hook really quickly. And just like the physical actor, DJ, you can always tell in a movie where someone's like trying to DJ but they're not doing the move right.
Or military.
Like
you get like
cocking a gun,
like you get the guys in the background to be your soldiers, they'll behave like soldiers because that's, you know, they're real actual soldiers.
And so, you know, you're always, I think it's great to create that mix of skills. But, you know, with a non-actor, you're going to get one good take out of them, you know, maybe two, you know, and it's going to be the first or second take. And they're going to say it, and then you'll keep giving them direction, and they'll be like, I didn't do it right. Like, what did I do wrong? And it's like they didn't do anything wrong. They're just not used to the process. Whereas a professional actor is going to give you different takes and shade meanings and do different things. And so when you're working, sometimes you'll have a cast of professionals and non-professionals. They can both be perfectly cast. The non-professional could be perfectly authentic, has the right voice, the right accent, whatever. The professional has the right look, can give you more skills. And so you're trying to find that balance of how can I get the most out of this team and get the best performance. And you just have to judge based on the actual people that you're working with, what's the best way to direct them, what you can get out of them, and not push them too far or go past what's going to benefit you in the long run, which is you're doing a lot of shots over the course of a day, you're changing locations, and you need to be able to get all of that and find the best way for each of your people to shine.
Yeah, and you know, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, filmmaking, like we were talking about some of the other points about having good sound, good cinematography, all those things. Well, acting is obviously a huge part of, you know, having a good film. So if everything else is great, but you just have bad acting, which I'm sure some of you guys have seen in some even big Hollywood productions, it just ruins it. It just takes you out of the moment, versus a good actor really sells the moment, makes it look real. So if you're a beginner filmmaker, I know it might seem like it's difficult or impossible for you to get somebody, especially if you can't afford to pay them, but you'd be surprised. There's a lot of amazing actors. Even I've worked on films where I had nothing to offer. Literally, I was like, all I can give you is lunch, but can you work on my film, please? And people, when they like you, when they like how to approach them, but I think at the end of the day, when they like the project, if
When
they
like
think
the script.
yeah, if they think the script is good, and then they think you're a cool person to work with, then there are a lot of actors, you'd be surprised, but a lot of actors who, you know, normally charge, you know, way out of your league, will actually do a project for a lot less, or for free even, for your project, just because I think the actors also want to try different things. And
actors want to act, you know, and they don't get a lot of times enough opportunities to do that. And so if you have a good project and they believe that you can pull it off, and then a lot of people are willing to take that jump with you just because they want to be in something good too.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of ways to get actors, whether it's, you know, go to Craigslist, but like Mendy.com is another, like there's a lot of websites out there that have good, you know, way to connect with other filmmakers, actors, you know, basically, you know, to get resources to make your film.
Pregnant pauses. This is related to casting, acting, whatever. When you have a bad actor, they tend to, you know what I mean? Like, like don't go for it. Like,
and then also, it kind of touches on the point with those long pauses, or like just bad editing. Is you'll sometimes, bad actor will force you to have to cut a lot of those bad pauses.
Yeah,
right?
they just want to dramatize every moment. It's like the moment he picks up that can of Coke is not a dramatic moment. He's taking a sip and he's walking to the next room. It's not, I'm so thirsty.
Unless it's a commercial for it. I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so watch out for that one.
Yeah, and definitely don't hire me as an actor. So that's it. Hopefully this video helps you guys avoid some of the most common mistakes a lot of beginner filmmakers out there make. And, you know, if you want to get more filmmaking tips and tricks and a whole lot of filmmaking tutorials, you know, you can find that on my website, which is tomatosfilms.com. As always, if you guys like this video, click the thumbs up, subscribe, and also check out Rafi's channel. He's an amazing filmmaker, and he's just starting out his YouTube channel.
It's called Rum Punch Films, and you can subscribe right here. And thanks for Tom for having me. And what I'm going to be talking about is a lot of the same issues. How do you take your idea creatively and get it out into your film? And so we're starting with the first video. What can you not live without? Tom is going to be my very special guest. Rum Punch Films, thank you very much for having me.
All right. See you guys next time.